I walked outside to see a brand new silver car sitting in our driveway. A giant red bow was tied across the hood, ribbons fluttering in the morning breeze. My younger brother Mark was jumping up and down like he'd won the lottery. My parents stood beside him, clapping and cheering like it was the best day of their lives. Mom had her phone out, snapping photos from every angle. Dad had his arm around Mark's shoulders, grinning wider than I'd ever seen. I stood there on the porch, confused and frozen. Nobody had mentioned buying a car. Nobody had said anything about a surprise this big. My stomach twisted into a knot as I watched them celebrate. Mark climbed into the driver's seat, gripping the steering wheel like he owned the world. The engine roared to life when Dad handed him the keys. Then I asked the question that would change everything. Where did the money come from? My voice cut through their laughter. The celebration paused. Mom turned to me with that casual smile she always wore when she was about to say something she thought was no big deal. From your college fund, honey. Your brother needed this more. The words hit me like a truck. My chest went hollow. Everything around me seemed to blur except for that shiny silver car with the stupid red bow. My college fund. The money they'd promised me since I was 10 years old. The account they said they were building for my future, for my education, for my dreams. Gone. Spent on 4 wheels and an engine for my brother who hadn't even graduated high school yet. What? I whispered, but nobody heard me. Mark revved the engine again, laughing as the sound echoed through our quiet neighborhood. Mom was already back to taking pictures, telling him to smile bigger. Dad walked around the car, admiring it like it was a work of art. I felt like I was drowning while everyone else was dancing on the shore. You'll figure something else out, Mom added over her shoulder, barely looking at me. Her tone was so light, so dismissive, like she just told me we were out of milk. My legs felt weak. I wanted to scream, to cry, to throw something. But I just stood there watching my future drive circles in the driveway while my parents cheered. My name is Olivia Matthews, and until that moment I thought my parents believed in me. I thought the sacrifices I made, the hours I studied, the dreams I shared with them actually mattered. I was wrong. Standing on that porch watching my brother celebrate while my future crumbled, I realized something cold and terrible. I had never been their priority. I had always been second place. The backup plan. The one who could figure it out while Mark got handed everything on a silver platter. This is the story of how my parents used my college fund to buy my brother a car. This is the story of the day I walked away for good. But it's also the story of how I refused to let their betrayal destroy me. How I turned their worst decision into my greatest motivation. How I proved that I didn't need their money or their faith to build the life I deserved. They thought they were teaching me a lesson about not being selfish. Instead, they taught me that I was strong enough to stand on my own. And that was a lesson worth more than any college fund. I remembered the promises so clearly it hurt. Every birthday since I turned 10, my parents sat me down and told me the same thing. Every check from grandma, every bit of birthday money, it's all going straight into your college account. They made it sound so official, so certain. Like it was already decided that I would go to college and they would help me get there. I remembered being 12, holding a $50 bill from my uncle and Mom taking it from my hand with a smile. This is going toward your future, sweetie. We're building something special for you. I believed them. Why wouldn't I? They were my parents. For 8 years I watched them take my birthday money, my Christmas cash, even the $100 I won in a school writing competition. For college, they always said. I imagined that account growing, getting bigger with each deposit. I pictured myself opening acceptance letters, knowing I had support waiting. I worked hard in school because I thought they were working hard for me too. Every A on my report card felt like proof that their investment was worth it. But it was all a lie. Meanwhile, my brother Mark never heard the word no in his entire life. When he wanted to play baseball, Dad signed him up for the most expensive travel team in the state. New gear every season. Hotel rooms for tournaments. Meals at restaurants while the rest of the team ate packed lunches. When Mark wanted new sneakers, he got them that weekend. When he needed a tutor because he was failing algebra, my parents hired someone who charged $75 an hour. When he wanted to go on a school trip to Washington, D.C., they paid the full cost without blinking. Mark was their golden child. Their pride and joy. The son who would make them look good in front of relatives and neighbors. Every achievement of his, no matter how small, was celebrated like he'd won an Olympic medal. Made the JV team? Dinner at his favorite steakhouse. Passed a test he'd been failing? New video game. Got his driver's permit? Well, apparently that deserved a brand new car. I watched all of this happen year after year, telling myself it was okay. Mark was younger. Boys needed more encouragement. My turn would come. I was so stupid. While they spent thousands on Mark, I worked. At 14, I got a job shelving books at our local library. Minimum wage, 10 hours a week. At 15, I started babysitting for families in our neighborhood. $5 an hour to watch toddlers while their parents went out. At 16, I picked up shifts at a coffee shop on weekends. I woke up at 5 in the morning to open, then went straight to school afterward. I saved every penny I earned. Well, most of it. Some went to buying my own school supplies because I felt guilty asking my parents after. Watching how much they spent on Mark. Some went to gas money when I borrowed mom's car to get to work. But most of it went into my own private savings account that I opened without telling anyone. Thought I was helping. I thought by working and saving I was lightening their load so they could keep building my college fund. I thought they'd be proud of how independent I was becoming. Instead, they barely noticed. While I worked double shifts on weekends, Mark slept in and played video games. Nobody ever suggested he get a job. Nobody ever said he should contribute. It was just expected that I would handle things myself. When I finally found my voice again, I walked up to Dad. My hands were shaking, but I forced myself to speak. Dad, that was my college money. You promised. He didn't even look guilty. He just shrugged, his eyes still on the car. Mark needs this car more than you need college right now, Olivia. He's got to get to practice, to games, to his job interviews. You can take the bus. Or get a job closer to home. Don't be selfish. Selfish. That word burned through me like acid. I was selfish. I worked 3 jobs while going to school full-time. I never asked for expensive baseball equipment or new phones or trips with friends. I saved every birthday check while Mark spent his on video games and junk food. I had sacrificed and studied and planned, and I was the selfish one? I've been planning for college since middle school, I said, my voice cracking. I've worked so hard. Dad finally looked at me, but there was no sympathy in his eyes. Only annoyance. You'll find scholarships. You're smart. Mark needs help getting started. That's what family does. We help each other. But they weren't helping me. They were helping him. Always him. I locked myself in my room and sobbed into my pillow. Great, huge, ugly sobs that shook my whole body. I cried until my throat ached and my eyes burned. I cried for the 8-year-old version of me who believed my parents when they promised to save for my education. I cried for the teenager who worked herself exhausted thinking she was building towards something real. I cried for the future I'd imagined, the acceptance letters I'd dreamed about opening, knowing I had support behind me. But mostly I cried because my own parents had looked at me and decided I wasn't worth investing in. That hurt more than losing the money. It hurt more than anything I'd ever felt. Through the window I could hear Mark showing off his new car to the neighbors. The engine revved over and over. People congratulated him. My parents laughed and bragged about what a good deal they'd gotten. Nobody came to check on me. Nobody knocked on my door to explain or apologize. I was just supposed to accept it and move on. After an hour my tears ran out. I lay there staring at the ceiling, feeling empty and hollow. Then something shifted inside me. The sadness began to harden into something else. Something colder. Something determined. I sat up and looked at myself in the mirror. My eyes were red and swollen. My face was blotchy. But behind all that I saw something new. Strength. Vigor. Resolve. I whispered to myself, testing the words. Fine. If they won't invest in me, I will. It felt powerful to say it out loud. To claim my own future instead of waiting for them to hand it to me. They'd made their choice. Now I would make mine. I opened my laptop and started searching. Scholarships. Grants. Financial aid programs. Work-study opportunities. Everything I could find. If I couldn't rely on my parents, I would build my own path. They thought I'd just give up and settle for community college, maybe work full-time and forget about my dreams. They thought taking that money would break me. They were wrong. That was the moment my revenge plan began. Not revenge in the cruel, destructive way. But revenge in the best possible way. I would succeed without them. I would prove that their money and their faith weren't necessary. I would become everything I'd planned to become, and they would have to watch knowing they hadn't helped at all. I would walk away from them and never look back. And it would be their loss, not mine. I applied to every scholarship I could find. Local ones sponsored by churches and community groups. state programs for students with high grades, national competitions that required essays and projects. Some were small, just $500. Others were full rides worth tens of thousands. I didn't care about the size. I applied to all of them. Every night after finishing homework and my shifts at work, I sat at my desk writing essays. What inspired you? Describe a challenge you've overcome. Where do you see yourself in 10 years? I poured my heart into every word. I wrote about my dreams of becoming a teacher, about wanting to help kids who felt invisible like I did. I wrote about perseverance and determination. I never mentioned my parents or the stolen college fund. I didn't need their story to make mine powerful. Through my bedroom window, I could see Mark's car parked in the driveway, a constant reminder of what they'd taken from me. Some nights I heard him come home late, music blasting, engine roaring. He'd go straight to his room without a care in the world. Meanwhile, I was up until 2 in the morning crafting the perfect scholarship essay. My eyes burned from staring at the screen. My fingers cramped from typing. But I didn't stop. Every application was another step away from needing them. Another piece of my own future that I was building with my own hands. I stopped arguing with my parents. I stopped bringing up the college fund or the car. When they asked why I was so quiet at dinner, I just smiled and said I was tired from work. They seemed relieved that I'd gotten over it. Mom actually patted my hand one night and said, "See? I knew you'd understand eventually. Family has to make sacrifices." I nodded and kept eating, but inside I was screaming. They had no idea what I was planning. They thought my silence meant acceptance. Really, it meant I was done wasting energy on people who didn't value me. I became the perfect, obedient daughter on the surface. I did my chores without being asked. I smiled when relatives came over. I even congratulated Mark when he got his first speeding ticket dismissed because Dad knew a guy. But I was watching everything. Taking mental notes. I saw how they braided about Mark to their friends but barely mentioned me. I saw how they framed his participation certificate from baseball but never hung up my academic awards. I saw how they bought him a new phone when his broke but told me to make mine last another year. Every little slight, every tiny preference, I cataloged it all. Not because I wanted to throw it in their faces someday, but because I needed to remember why I was leaving. Cracks started showing in my brother's perfect image. 2 months after getting the car, Mark had 3 speeding tickets. Then 4. Dad had to pay hundreds in fines and their insurance went up. Mark started skipping his morning classes, saying the car made it too easy to just drive around instead. His grades, which were never great to begin with, dropped even lower. He failed English and barely passed history. I watched my parents make excuses. He's still adjusting to having the car. Boys mature slower than girls. He'll figure it out. They hired another tutor. They had serious talks that never led to consequences. Mark promised to do better and then did exactly the same things. He started lying about where he was going. He'd say practice but come home smelling like cigarette smoke. He'd say study group but have no books with him. One night he backed the car into a mailbox and lied about it until the neighbor showed Dad the security footage. Dad grounded him for a week, but Mom let him use the car anyway because he needed to get to work. What job? I wanted to scream. He worked 10 hours a week at a grocery store and spent his entire paycheck on fast food and gas. The golden boy was tarnishing, but they refused to see it. I took a second job tutoring kids in math and English. $10 an hour, which was more than my other jobs paid. I worked Tuesday and Thursday evenings, helping middle schoolers with homework and test prep. Every single dollar I earned went into my hidden savings account. I didn't buy new clothes. I didn't go out with friends. I packed lunches from home and drank water instead of coffee. I became obsessed with saving money because that money represented freedom. When my old phone finally died, I bought a cheap replacement with my own cash. When I needed new work shoes, I got them from a thrift store. Meanwhile, Mark got the newest iPhone for Christmas. I got a gift card to a bookstore. "You like reading?" Mom said, like that made it equal. By spring, I had saved almost $4,000. It wasn't enough for a car yet, but it was growing. Every time I checked my account balance, I felt a little more powerful. A little more independent. This was mine. They couldn't take it. They couldn't spend it on Mark's next crisis. It was my escape fund, my freedom fund, my proof that I didn't need them. I would not be stranded. I would not be stuck. The email came on a Tuesday in March. Subject line: Scholarship Award Notification. My hands shook as I opened it. "Congratulations, Olivia Matthews. You have been selected as a recipient of the Presidential Scholarship, which covers full tuition, room and board and textbooks for 4 years at Henderson State University. I read it 3 times to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. Full ride. Everything paid for. 4 years of college completely free. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run downstairs and shove the email in my parents' faces. I wanted to tell Mark that while he was failing classes, I was getting a full scholarship to a university he couldn't even get into. But I didn't do any of that. I closed my laptop, grabbed my pillow and screamed into it silently, letting all the joy and relief and triumph pour out without making a sound. Then I sat there breathing hard, grinning like crazy. I had done it. Without their help, without their money, without their support, I had secured my own future. The scholarship was merit-based, awarded to only 15 students in the state. I'd competed against thousands of applicants and won. Me. The selfish daughter who should just take the bus. The one who wasn't worth investing in. I had won. And they had no idea yet. At dinner that night, my parents talked about Mark's car problems. The transmission was making a weird noise. Dad complained about how much the repair would cost. Should have bought a more reliable model, he muttered. But Mark wanted this one. Nobody asked about my day. Nobody noticed I was barely eating, too excited to have an appetite. I sat there quietly, cutting my chicken into tiny pieces, listening to them discuss whether to trade the car in or fix it. All that money from my college fund and the car was already having issues. Part of me wanted to laugh. Instead I just said, "May I be excused? I have homework." Mom waved me away without looking up. I went to my room and read the scholarship email again. And again. I had 6 weeks until I had to accept or decline. 6 weeks to plan exactly how I would reveal this to them. Because I wasn't going to let this moment pass quietly. They'd dismissed me, ignored me, taken from me. They would see what I'd accomplished despite them. But not yet. I needed to be patient. I needed to wait for the perfect moment. I bit my tongue and played the role of the powerless daughter just a little longer. They had no idea what was coming. Mom started planning Mark's graduation party in April. He went all out. Ordered fancy invitations with his name printed in gold lettering. Booked a catering company. Rented tables and chairs for the backyard. Bought decorations in his school colors. He spent hours on Pinterest planning every detail. "This is a huge milestone," she kept saying. "Our baby is graduating high school." Never mind that I'd graduated with honors 2 years earlier and gotten a cake from the grocery store and dinner at a chain restaurant. Never mind that my graduation had been barely acknowledged while Mark's was being treated like a royal wedding. I watched her plan and prepare, knowing something she didn't. This party she was throwing would become the stage for my biggest moment. I offered to help with decorations. "Oh, that's so sweet of you," Mom said, surprised. "You're being such a good sport about all this." A good sport. Like watching your parents celebrate your brother while ignoring you was a game you could win by having the right attitude. I smiled and hung streamers. I set up tables. I helped address invitations. And with every task I felt more certain about what I was going to do. The party was scheduled for the Saturday after graduation. Perfect timing. 2 weeks before Mark's graduation, I overheard Dad talking to Uncle Phil on the phone. I was in the kitchen getting water when Dad's voice carried from the living room. "Yeah, Mark's finally graduating. We're throwing him a big party. You should come." Pause. "Olivia? Oh, she'll just go to community college. That's her lane anyway. She's not really the university type. But she'll be fine." I stood there, glass in hand, frozen. Her lane. Not the university type. After everything I'd achieved, every honor roll certificate, every academic award, every exhausting hour of work and study, my own father thought I belonged in community college. Not because of my abilities, but because he'd decided I wasn't worth more. My hand clenched around the glass so hard I thought it might shatter. I wanted to march in there and tell him everything. About the scholarship. About Henderson State. About how wrong he was about me. But I forced myself to stay quiet. To breathe. To remember that in 2 weeks, everyone would know the truth. I set the glass down carefully and walked back to my room. I sat on my bed, staring at the wall, letting the hurt turn into fuel. He thought that was my lane. I would show him exactly what lane I belonged in. And he'd have to watch from the sidelines. My school's academic awards night was the Tuesday before Mark's graduation. I almost didn't mention it to my parents, but my guidance counselor called them directly to say I was receiving several awards and they should attend. They came, but they seemed distracted the whole time. Mom kept checking her phone, probably looking at party planning ideas. Dad yawned through the presentations. When my name was called for the English Department Award, they clapped politely. When I got the Mathematics Achievement Award, they clapped again, a little less enthusiastically. Then the principal stepped up to announce the scholarship winners. These students have demonstrated exceptional academic achievement and character. They represent the very best of our school. He read through the list. Local scholarships, state programs, small awards. Then he paused. And finally, this year we have one student who has received the Presidential Scholarship, one of the most prestigious merit-based scholarships in our state. This full-ride scholarship covers 4 years at Henderson State University. I held my breath. Olivia Matthews. The auditorium erupted in applause. My teachers stood up. My counselor had tears in her eyes. And my parents sat there completely shocked, clapping stiffly like robots. I walked to the stage, shook hands with the principal, and accepted the certificate. When I looked back at my parents, Mom's mouth was hanging open. Dad looked confused, like he couldn't process what had just happened. I smiled and waved. Their confused faces were almost as good as the scholarship itself. The next day I bought myself a car. Not a brand new one like Mark's, but a solid, reliable used Honda with only 70,000 miles on it. I'd been saving for months, and with the money from my tutoring job and all my other work, I had just enough for a decent down payment and manageable monthly payments I could afford with my summer job. I went to the dealership alone. I negotiated the price myself. I signed the paperwork myself. I drove off the lot in my own car, paid for with my own money, earned through my own hard work. The keys felt heavier than gold in my hand. The car wasn't flashy. It was 9 years old, silver gray with a tiny dent in the back bumper. But it was mine. Completely mine. Nobody had given it to me. Nobody could take it away. I parked it in the grocery store lot a few blocks from home. I wasn't ready to show my parents yet. That reveal would come at the right time. For now, I just sat in the driver's seat, hands on the wheel, breathing in the reality of what I'd accomplished. I'd earned a full scholarship to college. I'd bought my own car. I'd built my future from nothing. And I'd done it all without them. News about Mark's failures spread through our extended family faster than his earlier successes ever had. Aunt Kathy called Mom to ask if it was true that Mark was failing 2 classes and might not graduate. Uncle Phil heard through the grapevine about the speeding tickets and the insurance nightmare. Cousin Teresa mentioned at a family dinner that she'd heard Mark was skipping school regularly. The shiny image my parents had worked so hard to build was cracking publicly. Mark's car already had over $1,300 in tickets and fines. The repairs Dad had paid for didn't fix the problem, so more work was needed. Mark had gotten into a minor accident in a parking lot and hadn't reported it, so now there was a deductible to pay. The car that had cost my college fund was becoming a money pit. My parents brushed it all off. Boys will be boys. He's still learning responsibility. Everyone makes mistakes. But I could see the strain in Mom's face when another bill came. I could hear the edge in Dad's voice when Mark asked for more money. The Golden Boy was expensive to maintain. And for the first time they seemed to be realizing it. But they still weren't acknowledging what they'd done to me. Still no apology. Still no recognition of their mistake. I stopped waiting for it. The day of Mark's graduation party arrived. Our backyard looked like something from a magazine. White tablecloths on rented tables. Balloons in blue and gold everywhere. A catered buffet spread with more food than we could possibly eat. A huge banner reading "Congratulations, Mark" hung across the porch. Relatives started arriving around noon. Aunts and uncles, cousins, family, friends, neighbors. Everyone brought gifts and cards for Mark. He held court in the center of it all, accepting congratulations like he'd just won a Nobel Prize. For barely graduating high school. Mom glowed with pride. Dad grilled burgers and told stories about Mark's baseball games. I circulated quietly, saying hello to relatives, helping bring out drinks, staying in the background. Several relatives pulled me aside to congratulate me on the scholarship, having heard about it from the family gossip chain. "Your parents must be so proud," they said. I just smiled. Around 3 o'clock, Dad clinked his glass and called for everyone's attention. Speech time. Mom handed Mark a microphone. He rambled for 5 minutes about high school memories and thanked our parents for everything, especially the car. Everyone clapped. Then Dad turned to me. Olivia, want to say a few words? My moment had arrived. I stood up and took the microphone. My hands were steady. My voice was clear. I looked around at all the faces staring at me. Family members who'd watched me grow up. Neighbors who'd seen me leave for work at dawn and come home after dark. People who actually knew me, unlike my parents who'd stopped seeing me clearly years ago. Thank you all for coming, I started. This is definitely a day worth celebrating. Mark grinned, thinking I was about to praise him. I turned to look at my parents. Mom, Dad, I want to thank you for teaching me one of the most valuable lessons I've ever learned. They smiled, probably expecting gratitude. You taught me that I can't rely on anyone but myself. You showed me that promises don't always mean anything. And you proved that when you really want something you have to make it happen on your own. The smiles faded. People shifted uncomfortably. Last year you used my college fund to buy Mark this car. 8 years of savings, gone in one decision. You told me I'd figure something else out. You said I was selfish for being upset. I paused, letting that sink in. Someone gasped. But you were right about one thing. I did figure it out. I worked 3 jobs. I applied to dozens of scholarships. I studied until I couldn't keep my eyes open. Because I didn't need your money to build my future. I just needed to believe in myself more than you did. The backyard was completely silent now. I pulled a piece of paper from my pocket and held it up. This is my acceptance letter to Henderson State University. I've been awarded the Presidential Scholarship. Full ride. Tuition, room, board, books. Everything. For 4 years. One of only 15 students in the entire state to receive it. The crowd erupted in shocked applause. Several relatives cheered. My teachers who'd been invited were crying. My parents stood frozen, faces pale. I reached into my other pocket and pulled out a key ring, holding it up high. And these are the keys to my car. Not a brand new one like Mark's. But a solid, reliable car that I bought myself with money I earned. Unlike Mark's car, I earned mine through hard work, not handed it through someone else's sacrifice. More applause. Mark stared at his shoes, his face burning red. Dad opened his mouth but no words came out. I want to be very clear, I continued, my voice strong and steady. I'm not angry about the car anymore. Because that decision showed me who you really are and what you really think of me. And that information was valuable. It taught me that my worth isn't yours to decide. My future isn't yours to control. And my success doesn't require your approval. I looked at my brother. Mark, I hope you enjoy your graduation. You've worked hard for this day. Then I looked at my parents one final time. And Mom and Dad, I hope you understand what you gave up when you spent that money. You didn't just spend my college fund. You spent my trust. My respect. My faith in you. Those things don't have refunds. I handed the microphone to a stunned Uncle Phil and walked toward the house. Behind me, the party exploded into shocked whispers and loud conversations. Some relatives called after me. Others started questioning my parents. I didn't stop or look back. I went inside, grabbed the 2 suitcases I'd packed the night before, and walked out the front door to where I'd parked my car that morning, finally bringing it home for everyone to see. My phone started buzzing immediately. Texts from relatives. Calls from my parents. I ignored all of it. I loaded my suitcases into my trunk. Everything I needed was in those bags. Everything I cared about. I'd already arranged to stay with my best friend Kayla's family for the summer. I'd already lined up a full-time job. I'd already registered for my classes at Henderson State. Every detail was planned. As I opened my car door, I saw Mom running toward me from the backyard, Dad close behind. Olivia, wait. Don't leave like this. We can talk about this. I paused with one foot in the car. There's nothing to talk about, Mom. You made your choice. Now I'm making mine. We were going to congratulate you, Dad said desperately. About the scholarship. We just didn't know how to bring it up. Actually laughed. You didn't know how to bring it up? I earned the most prestigious scholarship in the state and you didn't know how to mention it? That tells me everything. I got in the car. As I drove away from that house, watching it shrink in my rearview mirror, I felt lighter than I'd felt in years. The weight I'd been carrying, the constant disappointment and hurt and anger began to lift. My phone kept buzzing. Messages from family members saying I'd been too harsh. Messages from others saying I was right to speak up. Messages from my parents begging me to come back so we could talk. I turned my phone to silent and kept driving. The summer sun was bright and warm through my windshield. The road ahead was clear. I whispered to myself, testing out the words that would become my truth. That was the day I walked away for good. And I meant it. I didn't go back for holidays. I didn't call on birthdays. I didn't forgive them because they asked. My parents had shown me who they were and I believed them. They'd chosen Mark over me again and again, and then acted shocked when I stopped fighting for their attention. They taught me to be independent and strong, just not in the way they'd intended. Years later, I would graduate from Henderson State with honors. I would become the teacher I'd always dreamed of being. I would build a life full of people who valued me, supported me, and never made me feel like second choice. My parents weren't part of that life. That was their loss, not mine. Because on that perfect graduation party day, I'd realized my worth wasn't theirs to decide. I was enough. I always had been. And I didn't need their approval to prove it. That was the day I walked away for good. And I never looked back.